Well, everyone, it's finally happened. Here in the UK and Europe, every new car that is sold has to be fitted or retrofitted with a speed limiter. And it's exactly as it sounds. The car will automatically pick up the speed of a particular road and you won't be able to go any faster than that speed on that road. So today we're going to discuss what the implications are of this, say new, but actually we did a video about this about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, when they first announced that this is what was going to happen. And we're also going to discuss when this is going to happen to bikes, because it will. According to government officials who support this initiative, it's also going to happen to bikes when the technology becomes available. And that's actually not that far away, guys. So the media's reaction to this has been fairly mute as far as I'm aware. There hasn't been much pro in favour or against this kind of stuff. It's been more of a case of, well, this is happening, and like this entire month leading up to when these changes were going to happen, I was getting notifications in my feed of different news articles saying this is going to happen. The misleading part that I found a lot of these articles, I don't know why they do this, but it's like clickbaity, is that they said on all cars, or they said this new speeding law will affect everybody, when it's not. It's just on new cars that are being sold from, well, I think this week, as far as I'm aware. My reaction to this is fairly similar to how I initially reacted when the news first came out about it. And it's funny how we voted for Brexit, and yet we're getting these things now from... No, not even going to go there. So, the way how I feel about this is, what this is trying to achieve, it's not going to achieve. All that it's going to do is just annoy drivers who are actually using the vehicles with these speed limiters, and all the drivers around those cars, the drivers around those drivers. And it's funny because, an article that came out, I think, a couple of weeks ago, I can't remember which one it was, but they had a go in one of these cars with a speed limiter, and they left it on, and they basically wanted to see how other drivers around them reacted, and it was all very negative and very poor. And I think road users, as a silent majority, don't like these changes. They want to be able to use the car like they did before. They don't want some system or AI getting in between them and what their inputs are. And I think that's perhaps one of the biggest practical cons to this whole thing, is there has to be some level of input and then feedback. But if this stuff doesn't give you feedback, or it's feedback that you're not expecting, it feels like you're not in control of the vehicle. And I know that some people will praise that. They'll be like, oh yeah, this is great, because self-driving cars, when that happens, there's going to be no deaths on the roads whatsoever. It's the same kind of people that think that when we get to this dystopian utopia of self-driving vehicles, that there's going to be no deaths on the road, and it's unrealistic and unpractical. There have been many reports of tests and things like that of self-driving cars that have either caused crashes or have caused injuries or deaths. It's totally unrealistic and impossible to avoid deaths on public roads. It simply won't happen. And like we discussed in a video recently, when you are doing a driving test, when you take a car and you take it out to the road, or a motorcycle, you are actively and knowingly accepting the risk that something might happen. More often than not, it doesn't happen. But in order to do that, you have to accept the risk, because otherwise, why would people do it? If you don't accept that risk, then go and take public transport, what have you. All right. The vast majority of people know and accept the risk and still use their private transportation regardless. It's almost like it's a consequence of modern living. In order to get from A to B faster, like using your car or riding your motorcycle, there's always going to be that risk. Whether you are behind the wheel or whether AI is behind the wheel, it doesn't matter. The risk is still there, it's still present. And even if you're on public transportation as well, if you're on a train or a bus, accidents happen on those as well, and people die as a consequence on those as well. And I think that's one of the things that these people have to understand and accept, is that because they think they can save everybody, And it is impossible. You're not going to be able to do that. It's unrealistic and Fantasyland stuff. But these kind of arguments are starting to gain traction. I think usually because it's attached to the whole green agenda that a lot of people have these days as well. And basically it's going to end up with all of us not being able to use our own cars, ride our own motorcycles. We're all going to have to use public transportation in one form or another to get around. So we're kind of being discouraged. With all these things coming out, we're being discouraged to buy nice cars, to buy nice bikes, because we're not allowed to use them. We're not allowed to enjoy them. And I think that's wrong, considering how big the culture is these days. It's not one of those things that you can just switch off. Funnily enough, you can switch off these speed limiters, and let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here. You are still allowed, or you're still able to turn off the speed limiters. But it's almost like governments thought, well, because it's a little bit inconvenient for someone to push a button, like we have to with start-stop. No one likes start-stop in their cars. It's just another button we have to press now. They thought that because that's inconvenient, people wouldn't do it. And so they would just drive with the speed limiters on. And the vast majority of people will actively turn it off because they don't want it. They don't want it and they don't like it. Same as start-stop. We turn it off. One, because it's inconvenient. You know, you're at a red light and you want to get away quickly. Well, sorry, you can't. You've got to wait for the engine to turn back on again before you can go. But also, it damages the engine. Everyone goes on about, being eco and things like that. Well, if you're actively wearing an engine prematurely, well, surely that is worse for the environment than spending a little bit extra on fuel to keep the engine running. But at least it has oil and it's able to stay lubricated and cool and things like that, which start-stop systems cannot do right now. And they maybe never will, because you have to have the engine off. It's kind of backwards thinking, and it's the same with this speed limiter stuff. It's totally backwards, the way how you're taking control away from the operator of the vehicle. And I think that's perhaps the biggest concern that I have, is that, when you provide an input to a machine, well, you get feedback from that machine, whether that's accelerating or braking. But when there's something in between that input and that feedback, that's when drivers might feel like they're losing control of the vehicle. Another interesting thing about this is that my wife's mum and dad, they used to have a Citroen Berlingo, and it was from 2019, I think, and it didn't have a speed limiter function, or it might have done, but it had the sensors, so it could pick up the speed limit of a particular road, and if you went over that speed limit, then it will start being angry at you. The dashboard will start beeping and making noises and things like that. The amount of times that car got the speed limit wrong on a particular road is just, it's not even funny, it's scary. And the fact that we are having to rely on these same systems to actually dictate to us what speeds we should and shouldn't be doing on our roads. Again, taking control away from the operator of the vehicle. And I think for the most part, here in the UK, as much as people make mistakes and some people are stupid, for the most part, people are pretty decent drivers here in the UK. It's not, I don't think the ability of drivers is that big of an issue. But of course, naturally, as you get confident in your driving abilities and things like that, you are going to drive a little bit faster. And for those of you that think that you can't control a vehicle if you're going over a particular speed, that's nonsense. So you're trying to tell me that I can control 70 mile an hour, or 80 mile an hour even, on a motorway or dual carriageway, but I can't control that same speed on a 30 mile an hour, or 40 mile an hour in a 30. It's ridiculous. It's totally just... It's extremism. It's wokeism, extremist nonsense that, I don't know, people seem to be grabbing hold of these days. But that kind of stuff really frustrates me, because, you get punished for riding in a safe manner, but because you are doing 2 or 3 mile an hour over the speed limit, you are punished for it. Just outrageous. How many of you have been caught speeding doing like 35 and a 30? Doing 45 and a 40, or even 81 mile an hour in a 70. Do you think that was fair? Probably not. I don't think it's fair, personally. And so it's just... as much as laws are meant to be there to help people and protect people and things like that, they're being used and abused to punish road users. And this is something else as well that is, in a lot of ways, a punishment for road users. The fact that we can't be trusted to use our vehicles properly and safely, even if we want to go a little bit faster, just doesn't make any sense. That's a load of nonsense, really, if you ask me. But anyway, I like the status quo. As much as I want people to be moving faster and we should be finding ways of getting people from A to B quicker, I like the way things are right now. And it's funny how everyone's got so rebellious about the 20-mile-an-hour laws in Wales that actually are looking like they're going to be reversed in the near future. Do you really think that 20 mile an hour has saved more lives than just keeping it at 30? And the old wisdom always was, stay at 30. And now that's too fast. Now that is not right now. That's too fast. Do you know that the reason why they did that, or their justification for rolling out 20 mile an hour across the whole country, I'm talking about Wales specifically here, is because of one study. Just one study that was done. They made a change to the entire country that a lot of people weren't happy with. And I remember actually going to Wales, driving around. It was horrendous. Traffic backed up ridiculously far, congestion everywhere, because it forces people to slow down. And it's not just over short stretches of road either. It wouldn't be so bad if it was just like a high street or something like that. These are miles and miles and miles of roads that have this limit on them. Just ridiculous. Again, it's extremism. It's extremism, but because it's attached to driving and road use, people don't think it's as extreme as it is. When it is, people aren't happy about it. And I don't think people are going to be happy about these speed limiters either. One thing I do think is going to happen is the value of new cars. Well, people won't buy new cars. Any cars past now to 2024, 2025 and beyond, they won't buy them. And the value of used cars pre-2024 will absolutely skyrocket. I think that's going to happen. And I think it's already happening. By next year, maybe the year after, I think the car industry is going to have some serious issues because they're not selling any new cars. No one thought about that, did they? But I genuinely think that's what's going to happen. I think that new car sales are going to absolutely tank because imagine even luxury cars, fast cars. Can you imagine having a speed limiter on a Nissan GTR, on a Civic Type R, and a Focus ST? Well, Ford aren't making Focuses anymore. But these hot hatches, these sports cars, these convertibles, all these cars that you're meant to enjoy are going to have speed limiters. No, I don't think people are going to buy that. People are going to buy the older ones because they don't have them. It's just obvious that this is what's going to happen. So, when is this going to happen for bikes? Well, the Kawasaki H2SX was a motorcycle that I had the privilege of riding recently, and the fact that it had all these systems, it had radar, it had adaptive cruise control, and it had the whole braking system alarm thing, kind of made me worry that we're basically already there. Remember that phones these days already have active AI features. The cameras are teeny tiny resolutions, 4K, 8K, 12K. The amount of power that phones can have now, well, it's not that far-fetched to see them in things like motorcycles. The technology, in a lot of ways, is already there. I think one of the things that's holding it back, maybe, is the AI functionality. Because even though phones, a lot of modern phones, advertise AI functions, the AI isn't actually built into the phone. It's actually done elsewhere. It's done remotely on a server. And so any AI function that you use on a phone today doesn't actually happen on the phone. It actually gets sent off to a remote server where the AI function is actually run there, and then it sends the data back to the phone. there's a lot of concern around that, around privacy and things like that, because effectively what you're doing is that if you're trying to edit a picture and using AI tools to edit a picture, you're sending that data off to a server somewhere. You have no idea where it's gone for it to come back. So the attitude towards that is changing a little bit, in the sense that instead of AI being in a remote location, AI is going to be built into the devices. And that's already happening. That's happening slowly, but it's already happening. And when that does happen, when AI is fully integrated into the device itself, well, that's probably when motorcycles are going to get the same speed limiter treatment. That'll be a dark day, guys. A very dark day. And we'll see how the car market reacts over the next 5 years to these speed limiters, but I suspect that it will give us a pretty good idea of what will happen to the motorcycle market. And what's interesting is that motorcycle sales are going down. Ever since COVID, they've been going down further and further. So the sale of new bikes is already an issue. Imagine when they have speed limiters. It's no secret that motorcyclists like to use their bikes, they like to ride their bikes, they like to ride them spiritedly. No rider is going to accept speed limiters on their bikes, even if they can switch them off. They're not going to do it. Why do you think start-stop isn't a feature on bikes? At least not as far as I'm aware. I think there may be one or two motorcycles that have start-stop around, but not many. The vast majority of them don't have any start-stop features or functionality whatsoever, because it's stupid. This is difficult because as much as governments and things want to implement this stuff on bikes as well as cars in the near future, taking more control away from a rider is not a good thing. There's a reason why MotoGP bikes, there's a reason why Formula 1 cars and touring cars have all these things stripped away, because it takes feedback away from the driver, the operator of the vehicle. It takes control away from the person behind the wheel, the person sitting in the cockpit, the person who is sitting on the bike. It takes control away from those people. And I don't think that's a good thing. The more reliant we are on these systems, one, the dumber the population will get when it comes to riding bikes, driving cars, the less awareness that these people will have as well, because they just expect the computers to do everything for them. And the worse it gets for us, people who actually enjoy our bikes and want to enjoy our cars. Yeah. I don't like it, and I don't like where it's going. It's kind of scary because, again, road users are silent when it comes to this stuff. We don't protest enough when it comes to this kind of stuff. We just accept it. We just let it happen. And it's really frustrating. For anyone who is an enthusiast, it's frustrating. For anyone who is a regular user, who wouldn't consider themselves an enthusiast, just they drive cars, they ride bikes, this affects them as well. And I always find myself thinking or wondering why they're doing this, because we're kind of all being treated as dummies, that we cannot control our bikes or our cars, that they're too fast. Do you know what? I'd love to see one of these people who thinks, we need more speed enforcement, we need to slow people down more and things like that. Chuck them on a motorcycle, put them on a track, and see how they feel then. Because on bikes, it doesn't take much. To be going over a speed limit, it doesn't take much. You can be going over a speed limit in first gear, second gear, with plenty of power left in the tank. Naturally, when you accelerate on a motorcycle, you're going to blast through a speed limit more often than not. Unfortunately, I can't be optimistic about this topic. I'm hypercritical and, overly critical and totally against this kind of stuff, because, again, it's restricting normal people's use of private transport. And it continues to, as much as I want to be an optimist, realistically, it keeps on pushing that anti-motorist thing that people have at the moment. I'm not saying people, not in general, government officials, what have you. Anti-motorist is one of those phrases that is being pushed more and more these days. And as much as I don't want to feel like as if there is some kind of agenda, some anti-motorist agenda, when things like this happen, you can't help but think to yourself, what is going on? Why are they doing this? Things are fine the way they are. Yes, accidents happen, people die on the roads. That's always going to happen whatever you do. So what's the big deal? What is the end game? What is the world going to look like when they're finished? Who knows? Scary, isn't it? Because none of us are going to know where this is going to end. And the only real ending that I can see is no bikes, no cars, nothing. Just trains, buses, public transport. That's all we'll have access to. I don't know, guys, but you let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and if you disagree with what I said today, that's all well and good. Let me know why down in the comment section. You know, don't think I'm a closed-minded person. I like to debate these things and have discussions about these things wherever I can. And if we can enlighten one another, then I think that's beneficial for everyone. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below, but be nice. I know this is quite a controversial subject, and I know that things can get a bit heated when it comes to this kind of stuff, but go ahead, leave that comment, leave that like, hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss any more of our videos going forward discussing these very difficult and divisive subjects. Because we're going to keep on doing them regardless. And we'll catch you on the next one, everyone. Take care. Ride safe.